The Ravagers were nightmares come to life, hulking predators, all teeth, claws, and a hunger for destruction. Entire civilizations had fallen to their swarms, and every species in the galaxy knew one rule: avoid the Ravagers at all costs. But humans? Humans had a knack for doing what no one else would even dare to consider. Commander Elena Carter stood aboard the bridge of the stalwart Dawn, humanity's most advanced research vessel. The planet below, covered in jagged black forests and glowing with eerie red fissures, was the Ravagers' homeworld. The Galactic Coalition had sent numerous expeditions here, but none had returned. Elena's team wasn't here to run. They were here to tame the beasts. "Mom," Lieutenant Harris said nervously, "are we really doing this?" Elena smirked, her steel-gray eyes unwavering. "Of course we are. It's what we do. Ready the landing team." As the stalwart Dawn descended into the atmosphere, the crew braced for the worst. The ship's scanners pinged with alarming frequency as massive shapes moved across the landscape. Ravagers, hundreds of them, prowled the forests below. Their guttural roars echoed even through the ship's reinforced hull. Elena's team set up camp near a clearing, their advanced barriers shimmering faintly in the toxic air. The humans worked quickly, deploying drones and setting traps not to capture the Ravagers, but to study them. Elena knew that understanding was the first step to taming. "Let's start with food," Dr. Meera Patel suggested. "Every predator responds to its stomach." The team released bait chunks of meat laced with harmless trackers. The first night was tense as they watched from the safety of their barriers. A Ravager, easily the size of a tank, emerged from the shadows. Its glowing yellow eyes scanned the area as it sniffed the air. With terrifying speed, it pounced on the bait, devouring it in seconds. "Trackers live," Meera whispered, relief evident in her voice. "We have our first subject." Over the following days, the team observed the Ravagers' behavior. They were fiercely territorial but surprisingly social within their packs. Elena noted their hierarchy, and Alpha led each group, with others deferring to its authority. To tame them, they needed to win over the Alpha. "Trust is key," Elena said during a team briefing. "We're not here to dominate them. We're here to prove we're allies." They began using reward-based methods, dropping food whenever a Ravager showed non-aggressive behavior near the humans. It was slow work. The creatures snarled and lunged at the barriers, testing the humans' resolve. But over time, their curiosity outweighed their aggression. One fateful day, the Alpha of a pack approached the camp. It was a massive beast, its black scales shimmering in the dim light. The team froze as it stepped closer, growling low. Elena, holding her ground, extended a drone carrying a piece of meat. The Alpha sniffed it, then snatched the offering with a quick snap of its jaws. "That's it," Elena murmured. "Let's keep going." Just as the humans made progress, a new threat emerged. An advanced alien species, the Xender, known for their cold, calculating nature, attacked the planet. The Xendar sought to harvest the Ravagers for bioweapons, and they wouldn't hesitate to wipe out the humans in their way. "We can't hold them off alone," Lieutenant Harris said, panic in his voice. "We're outgunned." Elena's gaze shifted to the pack of Ravagers watching from the tree line. She knew it was now or never. "Drop the barriers," she ordered. "What?" Harris exclaimed. "Are you insane? Trust me." The barriers fell, and the Ravagers surged forward not to attack the humans, but to stand beside them. The bond they had painstakingly built paid off. With a mix of human strategy and Ravager ferocity, they launched a counterattack against the Xendar. The battle was chaos. Ravagers tore through enemy troops and ships, their roars shaking the ground. Elena directed the beasts like a conductor leading an orchestra, using signals and drones to guide their movements. The Xender, overwhelmed and outmatched, retreated in disgrace. As the dust settled, the humans and their Ravager allies stood victorious. The Galactic Coalition, watching through their long-range sensors, was stunned. No one had believed it was possible to tame the Ravagers, let alone fight alongside them. Back aboard the stalwart Dawn, Elena looked out at the planet below. The Ravagers were no longer monsters in her eyes. They were partners. "What now?" Meera asked, leaning beside her. Elena smiled. Now we show the galaxy what humans are capable of. Word spread quickly across the stars. Humanity was dubbed the crazy species, bold, unpredictable, and capable of taming even the galaxy's worst nightmares. Elena didn't mind the nickname. After all, it was true. And for the first time in history, the Ravagers weren't feared as destroyers. They were respected as allies, thanks to the humans brave enough to tame the monsters. The mining colony on XR-17 was supposed to be a quiet operation. Captain Marcus Hale and his crew were there to extract precious minerals, not to fight for their lives. But things rarely went as planned when humans ventured into the unknown. The Relkans were the first sign of trouble. Towering predators, each standing over 15 feet tall, with razor-sharp claws and scales that shimmered like obsidian, they ruled the planet's surface. No one had ever encountered creatures so aggressive and intelligent. The crew's initial scans had missed them, and now their presence threatened to derail the entire operation. "We should leave," muttered Jess, the chief engineer, as the crew watched a pack of Ralkans tear apart a surveillance drone on the monitors. "There's no way we can work with those things out there." But Marcus Hale wasn't the kind of man who gave up easily. Leaning back in his chair, he studied the creatures on the screen. Their movements were calculated, almost strategic. They weren't mindless predators, they were something more. "We're not leaving," Marcus said firmly. "We've invested too much into this operation. Besides, I think there's more to these creatures than meets the eye." The room fell silent. The crew exchanged uneasy glances, but Marcus's confidence was hard to argue with. He had a reputation for bold decisions and for making them work. Instead of retreating, Marcus proposed a daring plan: study the Ralkans and find a way to coexist with them. "If we can understand them, we might be able to avoid conflict," he explained during a briefing. "Maybe even turn them into allies." "Allies?" Jess scoffed. "You're talking about taming monsters." "Exactly," Marcus replied with a grin. The team set up observation posts and deployed stealth drones to track the Ralkans' movements. They discovered that the creatures had a clear social structure. Packs were led by alphas, who coordinated hunting and territory defense. The Ralkans communicated with low-frequency growls and body language, something the crew began to study closely. Weeks turned into months. Marcus and his team used every bit of Earth's knowledge about predator behavior to make progress. They started leaving food offerings near the Ralkans' hunting grounds, carefully observing their reaction. At first, the creatures were suspicious, but over time, they began to accept the gifts without aggression. The breakthrough came when one of the alphas approached the humans' camp. The massive beast growled softly, its yellow eyes locked on Marcus. The crew froze, weapons at the ready, but Marcus raised a hand to stop them. Slowly, he stepped forward, holding a slab of meat. The alpha sniffed the air, then snatched the offering from his hand. It lingered for a moment, its gaze steady, before retreating into the shadows. "Well," Marcus said, exhaling deeply, "that's progress." The harmony was shattered one night when the crew picked up a distress signal. A fleet of space pirates was heading straight for XR-17. Known for their brutality, the pirates would strip the colony of its resources and leave no survivors. "We're outnumbered," Jess said grimly as the crew prepared for the inevitable. "Even with our defenses, we don't stand a chance." Marcus looked toward the tree line where the faint shapes of Ralkans moved in the darkness. An idea began to form. "Maybe we do," he said. As the pirates landed, their ships blanketed the horizon. The humans' automated turrets opened fire, but the pirates' numbers were overwhelming. Just as the first wave of enemies breached the perimeter, a deafening roar split the air. The Ralkans charged. The pirates didn't know what hit them. The creatures tore through their ranks with terrifying efficiency, claws slicing through armor like paper. The humans coordinated with the Ralkans, using drones to direct them toward key targets. Marcus himself fought alongside the beasts, his rifle blazing as he covered their flanks. The battle was over within hours. The pirates, terrified and outmatched, fled, leaving their ships and weapons behind. The Ralkans returned to the forest, their growls echoing like a victory cry. In the aftermath, the crew gathered to assess the damage. Against all odds, they had survived and they had the Ralkans to thank. "You're insane," Jess said to Marcus, though there was a hint of admiration in her voice. But it worked. Marcus chuckled. Sometimes crazy is exactly what you need. Word of the battle spread quickly through the galaxy. The idea of humans not only surviving on XR-17, but taming its most dangerous predators captured everyone's imagination. Marcus and his crew became legends, their story told and retold in bars and council chambers alike. As the colony resumed its operations, the Ralkans continued to watch from the shadows. They were no longer just predators. They were partners, a testament to humanity's audacity and determination. The galaxy whispered of the humans on XR-17, the ones who had tamed the beasts of the void. And Marcus Hale, standing at the edge of the forest, couldn't help but smile. Only humans, he said softly, would be crazy enough to try. The crash was brutal. Dr. Linway barely remembered the impact, only the sound of metal screeching and the cries of her team. When she came to, the world around her was alien, thick purple vegetation stretched to the horizon, and the sky glowed an unsettling green. The wreckage of their ship was scattered across the landscape, smoke rising into the sky. But the real danger wasn't the crash. It was the creatures that lived here, the Karath. Lynn had heard stories of them, massive, six-legged predators with armored hides and venomous fangs. Controlled by the hostile Zaylor species, the Karath were used as living weapons. And now, Lynn and her team were stranded on their planet, with no hope of rescue. "We're dead," muttered Jonas, one of the engineers, his voice trembling as distant roars echoed through the jungle. Lynn's eyes hardened. "Not yet. If we're smart, we can survive this." The Karath arrived on the second night. Their glowing red eyes pierced the darkness, and their guttural growls sent chills down the humans' spines. The team huddled inside the makeshift shelter they'd built from the wreckage, clutching their weapons. Lynn, however, was watching closely. "They're not attacking," she whispered. "They're curious." "Curious?" Jonas hissed. "They're predators." "So are wolves," Lynn replied, her mind racing. "But even wolves can be tamed." The team thought she was insane, but Lynn had spent years studying animal behavior on Earth. She knew that understanding a predator's instincts was the key to survival. Over the next few days, she began observing the Karath from a distance, noting their patterns and behaviors. They were territorial, but also highly intelligent. They communicated with growls, body movements, and even subtle changes in the color of their bioluminescent markings. Lynn's first step was simple: food. Using some of the supplies salvaged from the wreck, she left out meat near the edges of their camp. At first, the Karath ignored it. But eventually, one of the smaller ones approached, sniffing cautiously before snatching the food and retreating into the jungle. "It's a start," Lynn said with a small smile. Winning over the Karath was a slow and dangerous process. Lynn spent weeks leaving food at the same spot, gradually moving closer each time. The creatures began to recognize her, their growls less threatening and more curious. One day, the same small Karath that had taken the first offering approached her directly. Lynn held her breath as it sniffed the air around her, its massive head inches from her face. "Easy," she murmured, her voice calm and steady. The Karath blinked its glowing eyes and stepped back, letting out a low rumble that Lynn took as approval. Her team watched in awe. "You're actually doing it," Jonas said, shaking his head. "You're taming them." "Not taming," Lynn corrected. "Earning their trust." There's a difference. As the days turned into weeks, Lynn's bond with the Karath deepened. She discovered that they responded to specific sounds and gestures. By mimicking their growls and movements, she was able to communicate simple commands. The breakthrough came when she managed to lead an entire pack away from the camp, proving that they saw her as a leader. The Zaylor arrived without warning, their ships descending in a blaze of light. The aliens were tall, insectoid creatures with cold, calculating eyes. They had come to capture the humans and likely kill them. But Lynn had other plans. "We can't fight them," Jonas said, panic in his voice as the Zaylor surrounded their camp. "We're not fighting alone," Lynn replied, her gaze fixed on the jungle. As the Zaylor advanced, the Karath emerged. Led by the pack Lynn had bonded with, the creatures roared and charged. The Zaylor, unprepared for their own weapons to turn against them, faltered. Lynn stood at the forefront, her voice steady as she directed the Karath with growls and gestures. The battle was short but decisive. The Zaylor, realizing they were outmatched, retreated to their ships and fled the planet. The Karath roared in victory, their glowing markings pulsing in unison. When the dust settled, Lynn and her team stood amidst the Karath, now calm and almost protective of their human allies. Jonas let out a shaky laugh. "You really are the alien whisperer, Lynn." The nickname stuck. Word of Lynn's feats spread across the galaxy, earning humanity a new reputation. The Zaylor, humiliated by their defeat, agreed to peace talks, wary of the humans who could tame even the fiercest beasts. Back on the jungle planet, Lynn watched as the Kaeroth returned to their territory. She felt a pang of sadness, but knew they belonged here. As the team prepared to leave, Jonas asked, "What do we do now?" Lynn smiled. "We show the galaxy what humans are capable of." The galaxy would never forget Dr. Lin Wei, the woman who had turned predators into allies. And as the humans ventured further into the stars, everyone wondered, what else could these beast whisperers accomplish? Dr. Alex Harper squinted under the harsh twin suns of the planet Vetra 5, his face smeared with dirt and sweat. Around him, the remnants of his research team were a mix of fear and exhaustion. Their ship had crashed 2 days ago, leaving them stranded in a hostile environment filled with towering, razor-sharp foliage and ominous sounds echoing through the thick air. But the most terrifying aspect of Vetra 5 was the Scarith. The Scarith were massive insect-like creatures, each the size of a hover truck. They moved with an eerie coordination, their exoskeletons shimmering like polished metal in the sunlight. With jagged pincers and venomous stingers, they were the undisputed predators of this world. The crew's scanners had already picked up a nest nearby, and tension was high. "We're not surviving this," muttered Casey, one of the engineers. "Those things are going to tear us apart." Alex, however, had a different perspective. He adjusted his cracked glasses and stared into the dense jungle where the Scarith's nest was hidden. "Not necessarily," he said. "These creatures, they're intelligent, organized. We might not have to fight them." The crew looked at him like he was mad. "What are you suggesting?" Casey asked. "We asked them nicely not to eat us?" Alex smiled faintly. "No, but we can communicate with them. Insects on Earth respond to pheromones. If we can understand how the Scarith use theirs, we might be able to talk to them." The crew was skeptical but desperate. With limited supplies and no way to signal for help, they didn't have many options. Alex began by studying the Scarith from a safe distance, using drones to monitor their behavior. He noticed patterns in their movements, ritualistic dances, exchanges of chemicals, and coordinated attacks on smaller prey. These weren't mindless monsters. They had a language, one made of sense and signals. Using a makeshift lab built from the wreckage of their ship, Alex and his team started synthesizing pheromones. They worked tirelessly, experimenting with different combinations to mimic the Scarith's chemical communication. After several failed attempts, they finally managed to attract a lone scout. The creature approached cautiously, its antennae twitching as it sniffed the air around their camp. "Stay calm," Alex whispered as the crew froze in terror. He held up a small device emitting the synthesized pheromones. The Scarith tilted its head, its massive pincers clicking softly. Then, to everyone's amazement, it backed away without attacking. "It worked," Alex said, his voice filled with awe. "We've opened a line of communication." Building trust with the Scarrow was a slow and dangerous process. Alex and his team began leaving offerings of food laced with specific pheromones near the edge of the nest. Over time, the creatures grew less aggressive, allowing the humans to approach closer. One day, a larger Scarith, clearly a leader, emerged from the nest. It stood motionless, observing Alex as he carefully placed a new pheromone emitter on the ground. The two locked eyes, and for a moment, Alex felt a strange connection. He realized this wasn't just a predator, it was a creature capable of understanding. Using what they'd learned, the team devised a way to mimic the Scarith's social hierarchy. Alex began conversing with the leader through carefully timed pheromone releases and body language. Slowly, The Scareth began to see the humans not as prey, but as something more. Just as the team's efforts were showing promise, disaster struck. A rival faction of colonists, armed and ruthless, arrived on Vetra 5. They had come to claim the planet's resources and didn't care who got in their way. When they discovered Alex's camp, they launched an unprovoked attack. "We're outnumbered," Casey said, panic in her voice. "We can't fight them and the Scareth at the same time." Alex's mind raced. "We don't have to," he said. "The Scareth can help us." It was a gamble, but there was no other option. Alex approached the nest one last time, this time unarmed. The leader's Scareth emerged, its antennae twitching as Alex released a carefully crafted pheromone signal. It was a call for unity, a plea for help. For a tense moment, nothing happened. Then, the leader let out a powerful screech that echoed through the jungle. Dozens of Scareth emerged, their eyes glowing with a fierce light. They moved as one, following Alex as he led them back to the camp. The rival colonists never stood a chance. The Scareth attacked with precision, their venomous stingers and razor-sharp pincers tearing through the enemy's defenses. Alex and his team fought alongside the creatures, using their knowledge of the terrain to outmaneuver the invaders. The battle was brutal but swift, and by the end of it, the colonists were driven off the planet. In the aftermath, the Scareth returned to their nest, but the bond between them and the humans remained. Alex stood at the edge of the jungle, watching as the leader Scareth disappeared into the shadows. He felt a deep sense of gratitude and respect for the creatures that had saved them. Word of Alex's achievements spread quickly. The galaxy was in awe of the man who had turned predators into allies, using nothing but science and determination. The Scareth became humanity's unlikely partners, a symbol of what was possible when understanding replaced fear. Back on Vetra 5, as the team prepared to leave, Casey turned to Alex. "Do you think we'll ever see them again?" Alex smiled. "Maybe. But even if we don't, they've shown us something important. Survival isn't just about fighting. It's about finding common ground." And with that, humanity took another step toward proving they were more than just survivors. They were innovators, capable of forging alliances in the unlikeliest of places. The galaxy would never forget Dr. Alex Harper and his Scareth allies, the ones who stood together when it mattered most.